Hey everyone, it's Kate, and today is part 2 of my Tabula Rasa jacket from Fit for Art Patterns. Today I'll be talking about cutting out and preparing the pieces for sewing, sewing the darts and the shoulder seams, and also sewing the underarm seams and sewing them to the side seams, which is kind of an unusual method that's unique to this pattern, and we'll also get the sleeves ready to insert into the armholes. And next week I'll actually insert the sleeves, and the week after that we'll do the hems and the neckline. This month's theme is It's a Colorful Life, and the giveaway is this Field Guide to Color by Rachel Hauser. She's one of our wonderful partners, and also a fat quarter bundle. The question of the month is, what colors do you gravitate toward, and why do you think you like them so much? And all you need to do is answer the question in the comments below, and we will enter you to win the giveaway. We'll announce the winner at the end of the month. Today's confident shout out goes to Janice and Cassie, who made a modern drunkard's path quilt out of a bunch of our fabrics. The pattern was designed by Maritza Soto, and I will include a link to her blog in the YouTube comments below. You should check her out. She's got a ton of really cute modern quilting patterns. So cutting out and preparing this project for sewing is really pretty easy. There aren't that many pattern pieces, and you just want to make sure that you're on grain. Ray and Carrie, who designed this pattern, say you should all cut your notches out, which I didn't do because I love to cut with my rotary cutter, and I just kind of chop them off and then snip them into the seam allowance, even though it's not advised. You should be better than me. But I did use tailor's tacks for the dots so that you could see them. And also I just really love tailor's tacks because you can see them on the right side and the wrong side. And no matter how long it takes you to finish your project, they'll still be there. A lot of times with marking tools, they either disappear or brush off, and you can't find the mark when you're ready to sew. I also serged some of the edges, just the edges that I'm going to end up pressing open, and I'm going to put a list of those in the YouTube description below as well. And also, to get ready to sew, I stay stitched the neck edge, and I stay stitched the front edge. Both the neck edge and the front edge cross the bias, so they could get stretched out. So you definitely want to stay stitch them before you start sewing. And stay stitching is just stitching somewhere within the seam allowance. I did it at about the 3/8. This has a 5/8 inch seam allowance. On a single layer of fabric to keep it from stretching out. And when you stay stitch the neck edge, you want to start from each shoulder and go toward the center. If you go from one shoulder all the way to another shoulder, you could accidentally kind of pull it out of shape. I also added my neck darts, which I talked about last time when I showed how to do the high round back adjustment. And I'll have a link to my previous video about this project. So I did my little 2-inch neck darts off camera. So my neckline is ready to go. And I'm gonna show you how to sew a bust dart now, which is just like sewing a neck dart. So we're gonna go over to the machine. And I'm gonna move this out of the way. So this is one of my front pieces. This is the center front, which I stay stitched. And then this is the side front. And No matter what, I always just do a little snip at the ends of the dart legs so I know where to fold. And then I have a nice tailor's tack here at the tip of the dart. Can you see that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to fold the fabric right sides together. This is a great woven from Juicy Juice, and this kind of more vibrant side is the wrong side. So here's my little tailor's tack for the tip of the dart. And I'm gonna line up the 2 snips for the dart legs. And then you can pin. This is a very short dart because the side seam is kind of toward the front. But if it's a longer dart, I definitely pin. So I'm gonna get everything in place. And then, oh, of course, I'm going to see if I can grab. Usually when I'm mid sewing, my bobbin thread is out. Where is it? Nope, I don't need that. Thank you. That just fell. So here's my bobbin thread. You always want to go from wide to narrow. So I'm gonna start at the edge, and I'm gonna grab my bobbin thread and line it up with the tip of the dart, and that will be my guide for where to sew. And so I don't need to draw my dart or anything. It's quite handy. So I'm just going to go forward a couple stitches, maybe, and then back. And then I'm just following my bobbin thread, which is lined up with the end of the dart. And as I reach the folded edge, I'm going to do a couple stitches right parallel to the edge so that there's not too abrupt a change. You really should shorten your stitch length at the end of a dart. But whenever I do that, then I forget to lengthen it when I start sewing again, and then I get frustrated. So I'm going to cut a nice little tail because, and this is my bobbin thread is a little bit caught in here, but I'm going to cut a long tail because I'm going to tie these ends by hand instead of back stitching to reduce the bulk. I'm not going to do it on camera because it usually takes me a little while, and that would be not fun to watch. So now I'm going to show you how to press it. Maybe the secret to a good dart is good pressing. So at first you want to just press it as you sewed it, so it's nice and flat. And this is a tailor's ham, which is supposed to mimic a shoulder, but it also mimics a lady part. So you can see my nice visible tailor's tack. Makes my life easier. So then you want to find a spot on your ham that mimics the shape, that kind of makes it so your dart can lay flat. And then I'm gonna, I have the steam off. I'm gonna get some steam going on there. And I'm really just hovering my iron. I'm not pressing really hard. And then I put my hand on and kind of just let it cool in the rounded position. And then I have a nice dart that doesn't poke out and creates just a really nice curve. And I'll remove my tailor's tack later. And now, after you sew your dart, it's time to sew your shoulder seams. And I've sewn one side. So this is the back. And I'm going to put this front piece right sides together with the back at the shoulder seam. Line up my notch, toss in a couple pins, and sew it at 5/8 of an inch. And here we go. Do you want to get that out of the way? Here we go. So this machine does not actually have a line at the 5/8. So I built a little ledge out of painter's tape. It's about 8 or 10 layers thick, and put it at the 5/8 of an inch so that I would have a really good guide. It's right now I'm vacillating between sewing this and making a quilt. And it's really hard because this seam allowance, this 5/8 is so large, and then compared to the 1/4 inch that I'm using for my quilt. So it really helps me to have a good guide. So back stitch again and snip. And now I'm just going to press this open, and the front and back are connected at the shoulder seams, and they will be ready for sleeve insertion next week. And now I'm going to talk about the sleeves. Well, no, I'm actually going to stay overhead, I think. All right. So I've sewn one sleeve, and I sewed it to the side panel, and I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing you want to do is, while the sleeve is flat, you want to sew some basting stitches for gathering it so that it will fit in the sleeve cap. You can see how it's already gathered a little bit, and it's starting to look like a sleeve already. I learned a really fun trick for this when I was making a Merchant and Mills pattern. And, you know, traditionally you do 2 lines of basting stitches and then pull them to gather up your fabric. But I tend to pull and then pull the thread all the way out because I haven't done any back stitching. So Merchant and Mills suggests doing 1 row where you do back stitch at one end and not the other, and then do your other row starting at this end and back stitching and not back stitching at the other end. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my second row, and I'm lengthening my stitch length a little bit to about 3.5 because this fabric is pretty thin, and if I lengthened it all the way to like 4 or 5, it would be really hard. Oh, okay. Luckily I wanted to back stitch there. So I'm back stitching at the opposite end from my first row. And you basically just want these basting stitches to be about 1/8 of an inch from each other and within the seam allowance. But you'll pull them out at the end anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. So now that I got to the end, I'm just going to pull it out and leave a tail so that I can pull the threads when it's time to insert the sleeve. So now I'm going to sew the sleeve, the underarm seam. Come back over here. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to sew, I want to call it the side seam of the sleeve, but it's really kind of the underarm seam. And I will pin it. This is a seam that I might not pin because it's pretty easy and it lines up well. We're having some battery issues with our sewing machine camera. We have amassed quite the setup here. It's really it's really exciting because I love making videos so much, and it's taken us a long time to get all the equipment and the wires and cords that we need. It's amazing how non-universal cords are. Okay, we're ready. So I'm just gonna sew this seam and talk about going around this curve. And I'm back. Whoop. Awesome. Rachel is amazing. You don't think about all the behind the scenes work that goes into making videos, especially with multiple cameras. So just following my little ledge. I sew with so many different machines. I have a different one at home, and we have a couple of them here that are different. And my one at home has a nice 5/8 inch mark on the throat plate, so I don't need to make one of these ledges, but I'm not gonna wing it. So here as I come up to this, it's a pretty tight curve, and you know, you can try to get around it evenly, but there's no shame in having to stop with your needle down and lift the foot and pivot a little bit. And then, oops, lift the foot, pivot, down. Here we go. And a back stitch. And up. And then the instructions don't say this, but I found that the sleeve doesn't lay very flat in this curve unless you clip it. So I am gonna snip this into the seam allowance along the curve. Whenever I snip, I don't let my scissors cross the seam allowance because I don't trust myself to stop. So I keep the tip of the scissors not crossing the seam. Okay, we're gonna press this open. I will. The side seams are really the only unusual aspect of this make. I've never made side seams this way, but they're really nice. You'll see, especially because I'm using a contrasting fabric for this version, it makes it really fun and really makes me realize why it's called the Fit for Art jacket, because you can really show off special fabrics, like if you've traveled and have some beautiful silk or some Guatemalan fabric from another country, or just some beautiful fabric in your stash. You can use it as your side seam or your neckband and really make a fun jacket. So in this curved part, I'm putting it over the tailor's ham. So even though it's not curved exactly the same way as the curve, it does help when I'm pressing a curve. So I'm going to get this pressed open. Can you see this? Okay, okay, good. All right. And now for the one unusual thing of this pattern. So this is the sleeve, and then it has this kind of flat area and then the side seam. And you want to sew, you want to open this up and create kind of a straight line. And this is the side panel. This is the right side of the side panel. And I'm gonna just position this seam right on top of my tailor's tack, however you mark the dot. This is the top edge of the side panel. And I will do some pins because you're kind of changing the shape of the sleeve. So then you have this nice straight connection point, and I'm going to sew this at 5/8 of an inch with the sleeve on top so that I can make sure that it's not puckering up in any way. So I'm going to head back over to the sewing machine. Clumhouse, one of the pattern companies we love, they're a bag company. They have or maybe it was just last week, but they had a little sale going on. So if you love Clumhouse, you could head over there. But the code for it was fake spring, which I love because that is where we are here in Montana. It's a terrible gray day. It was really cold on my walk down here. Spring teases us all the way until May or June. Okay, so now I've sewn the seam and I just need to press it open. So these are 2 seams that I did pre-serge. You'll see next week when we set in the sleeves and do the side seams, I didn't pre-serge those seams because I'm going to serge them together because they get pressed together. So there we go. We have our unusual and yet functional and wonderful sleeve connected to the side panel. And you can see the curve looks nice because I clipped it. And we're ready for next week, inserting the sleeve head into the armhole. So I hope to see you next Saturday, again at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time. This Wednesday at noon, we're going to post a video that we've already filmed where I interviewed Nancy Nix Rice, who is an expert on clothing style, silhouette, and color. And she's talking about color theory for clothing and as it applies to our swatch service. So I hope that you tune in to that video, but both of these videos, all our videos will be on YouTube forever, so you can watch whenever it's convenient to you. So I hope to see you soon, and I hope you enjoy making this jacket with me. Bye for now.